A Werewolf Shifter Romance. Written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. Echoes of Era Rhiannon woke to the sound of rain against stone, each drop a hammer blow that echoed through the grief lodged in her chest. 3 days since they had lowered Era into the earth. 3 days since the world had lost its color and meaning. Her twin sister was dead, fallen from the eastern cliffs during what should have been a routine patrol. The pack said it was quick, that Era wouldn't have suffered. Rhiannon wasn't sure if that made it better or worse. She lay in the bed they had shared since childhood, staring at the space where Era should have been. The sheets on that side remained perfectly smooth, untouched. Her wolf whined somewhere deep inside her, mourning a bond severed too soon. The door to her chamber opened without warning. Rhiannon didn't need to look to know who it was. Her father's scent preceded him, pine and authority and something darker that had grown stronger since Era's death. Desperation, perhaps, or fear. Get up. Godric's voice held no room for argument. He was alpha of the Silvercrest pack, and even grief bowed to his will. We need to talk. Rhiannon pushed herself upright, her long brown hair falling around her shoulders in tangled waves. She caught sight of herself in the polished bronze mirror across the room and flinched. The face staring back could have been Era's. Same amber eyes, same scattering of freckles across pale skin, same small frame that had never quite matched their warrior sister's presence. Except for the scar, the tiny mark on her chin from a childhood fall that Era had never had. Her father moved to the window, his broad shoulders blocking the gray light. Rain streaked down the glass behind him, distorting the view of Silvercrest's stone courtyard below. When he finally spoke, his words were measured, calculated. The Luna trial is in 1 week. Rhiannon's stomach clenched. She had forgotten. How could she have forgotten? Era had been preparing for months, training relentlessly for the chance to prove herself as the pack's future Luna. 5 candidates from allied packs were set to compete. It was supposed to be Era's triumph. Father, I don't think you will take her place. Godric turned to face her, his eyes hard as flint. The pack cannot afford to appear weak. We've already lost our heir. If we withdraw from the trial, every rival will see it as vulnerability. The words hit Rhiannon with the force of a physical blow. Take her place? Father, I can't just... You're identical twins. His tone suggested the matter was already settled. No one outside our immediate family could tell you apart. You'll compete as Era. You'll win as Era. But I'm not her. The protest came out small, childish. Rhiannon hated the weakness in her own voice. No. Something cruel flickered across her father's features. You're not. Era was strong, decisive, born to lead. But she's gone. And you're what remains. The words shouldn't have hurt. Rhiannon had heard variations of them her entire life. She was the spare, the shadow, the one who excelled at things that didn't matter to a warrior pack. Diplomacy, mediation, understanding the complicated webs of pack politics. Those were valuable skills, just not the ones that won Luna trials. Her mother appeared in the doorway, drawn perhaps by the tension crackling through the room. Edith's amber eyes, so like her daughter's, were red-rimmed and hollow. She looked at Rhiannon with something between pity and resignation. Godric. She needs time to... Time is a luxury we don't have. Her father's voice cut through whatever protest Edith might have offered. The packs arrive in 4 days. She needs to be ready. Rhiannon found her voice again, stronger this time. What you're asking is impossible. I don't fight like Era did. I don't think like her. Anyone who knows her will see through this in minutes. Then you'll train. Godric moved closer, and Rhiannon caught the scent of barely contained desperation beneath his authoritative exterior. You'll study her techniques, her mannerisms, everything. 4 days is enough. And if I refuse? The silence that followed was crushing. Her father's expression darkened. And for a moment, Rhiannon saw the alpha who had clawed his way to power through strength and ruthlessness. You won't refuse. It wasn't a prediction. It was a command laced with the weight of his authority. This family has already lost too much. You will do your duty to this pack. He left without waiting for a response, his heavy footsteps echoing down the stone corridor. Edith lingered in the doorway, her fingers worrying at the fabric of her dress. I'm sorry. Her mother's voice was barely a whisper. "I know this isn't fair to you, but your father is right about one thing. Without a strong heir, the pack becomes vulnerable. There are those who would see Era's death as an opportunity. So I'm supposed to live as her ghost?" Bitterness crept into Rhiannon's words. Pretend to be the sister everyone loved while being the daughter everyone wishes had died instead? Edith flinched. "That's not, isn't it?" Rhiannon stood, wrapping her arms around herself. "I've always known I was the disappointment. At least be honest about what you're asking me to do." Her mother opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "You were never a disappointment, Rhiannon. Just different from Era. And sometimes, being different is not enough," Rhiannon supplied when her mother trailed off. "I know, Mother. I've always known." Edith left without another word, and Rhiannon was alone again with her grief and her anger and the impossible task her father had laid at her feet. A knock at the door, softer this time, made her tense. But when it opened, it was Bryn who slipped inside, her best friend's familiar face a small comfort in the chaos. "I heard." Bryn's dark eyes were wide with shock. "Rhiannon, he can't be serious. This is madness." "When has my father ever been anything but serious?" Rhiannon moved to the window, pressing her forehead against the cold glass. Outside, the rain continued its relentless assault on the castle stones. Bryn crossed the room to stand beside her. They had been inseparable since childhood, the three of them, Rhiannon, Era, and Bryn. Now one was gone, and the grief of it felt like a physical wound that would never heal. "What are you going to do?" Rhiannon thought of her father's orders, of the Luna trial looming ahead like an executioner's blade. She thought of Era, brilliant and fierce and gone. She thought of spending the rest of her life wearing her sister's face, living a lie, being judged against the memory of someone she could never measure up to. "I don't know." The admission felt like defeat. "But Bryn, promise me something. Promise me you won't tell anyone about this." Her friend's expression shifted to alarm. "Rhiannon, promise me." Rhiannon gripped Bryn's hands, feeling the desperation claw at her throat. "If this goes wrong, I don't want you caught in the consequences." Bryn searched her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I promise, but I don't like this." Neither did Rhiannon. But the alternative was standing up to an alpha father, who had already made his decision. And she had never been the brave sister. That had been Era. What Rhiannon didn't say, what she could barely admit even to herself, was that a seed of an idea had already begun to take root in the dark soil of her grief and anger. Her father wanted her to compete as Era. He wanted her to win as Era. But what if she didn't win at all? Chapter 2. The trial begins. 4 days of preparation had done nothing to make Rhiannon feel ready. She stood in what had been Era's chamber, staring at the battle leathers her sister had worn during training. The smell of her twin still clung to the leather, pine and steel, and something uniquely Era that made Rhiannon's throat tighten with fresh grief. "Hold still." Her mother's fingers worked at the laces of the vest, pulling them tight enough to restrict breath. "You need to look the part." Rhiannon caught her reflection in the bronze mirror and barely recognized herself. Her hair had been braided in the intricate warrior's style Era favored, pulling the strands back from her face in a way that made her features look sharper, more aggressive. The battle leathers fit perfectly because they were twins, because their bodies had always been mirror images even when their souls were not. "Remember," Edith said quietly, her hands smoothing over Rhiannon's shoulders. Era always led with her right in close combat. She favored high guards over low, and she never, ever hesitated. Unlike me, Rhiannon thought, but didn't say. She had spent the last 4 days studying her sister's fighting style, memorizing patterns until her head ached, but knowing the moves intellectually and executing them under pressure were different things entirely. "The packs have arrived." Godric's voice from the doorway made them both turn. He looked at Rhiannon with an expression she couldn't quite read. Satisfaction, perhaps, at how well the deception worked. Or maybe just relief that his plan might actually succeed. It's time. The Great Hall of Silvercrest had been transformed for the Luna trial. Banners from 5 different packs hung from the stone walls, their colors bright against the gray stone. Members of each pack filled the long tables, their voices creating a rumble of anticipation that made Rhiannon's stomach clench with nerves. She entered with her father, keeping her chin high the way Era always had, confident, unshakable, a leader born, not made. The other 4 candidates were already present. Rhiannon recognized 2 of them from previous gatherings, strong women with the bearing of warriors. The other 2 were strangers, but the way they carried themselves spoke of violence held carefully in check. "And finally," announced Meredith, the ancient healer who would oversee the trials, representing the Silver Crest Pack, Era, daughter of Alpha Godric. The room erupted in respectful noise. Rhiannon forced herself to nod acknowledgement, channeling every memory she had of her sister's graceful arrogance. Don't think. Just move like she would move. Stand like she would stand. That's when she felt it. A prickling awareness along her spine, as if someone's gaze had physical weight. She turned slightly, searching for the source, and her eyes found the raised platform where visiting alphas sat in observation. He dominated the space without trying. Tall and broad-shouldered, with black hair that fell past his collar, and a beard that framed a face of sharp angles and harder edges. But it was his eyes that arrested her, deep green and penetrating, fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Something shifted in Rhiannon's chest. A warmth that had nothing to do with the press of bodies in the hall bloomed beneath her ribs, spreading through her veins. Her wolf, usually so quiet, stirred with sudden awareness. The man's expression flickered, surprise crossing his features before smoothing back into careful neutrality. But his gaze never left her, tracking her movements as she took her place among the other candidates. "That's Alaric of Thornvale," someone murmured nearby. "The rival pack. Wonder what he's doing here." Rhiannon's heart hammered against her ribs. She knew that name. Thornvale and Silvercrest had been enemies for a generation, ever since some ancient dispute over territory had fractured what had once been an alliance. But ancestral law required that all neighboring alphas be invited to witness Luna trials. Tradition demanded it, even when politics suggested otherwise. The ceremony of opening passed in a blur of formal words and ritual gestures. Then Meredith raised her staff, the ancient wood catching torchlight. "The first trial," she announced, her voice carrying through the sudden silence, "is combat. Each candidate will face a warrior of equal skill. Victory is required to proceed." The circular arena in the center of the hall had been cleared. Rhiannon watched as the first candidate entered, facing off against a lean woman with scars crisscrossing her forearms. The fight was brutal and quick, ending when the candidate forced her opponent to yield. 2 more candidates followed, each proving their strength. Then it was Rhiannon's turn. Her opponent was older, experienced, with the confident stance of someone who had survived countless battles. Rhiannon stepped into the circle, her heart a drum against her ribs. She tried to adopt Era's fighting stance, right foot forward, weight balanced for quick strikes. "Begin." The warrior came at her fast. Rhiannon barely got her guard up in time, blocking a strike that would have caught her temple. She countered, but the movement felt wrong, too hesitant. Era would have been decisive, aggressive. Rhiannon was calculating, defensive. She deliberately left an opening on her left side, the kind of mistake a tired fighter might make. Her opponent took it, lunging forward. At the last second, Rhiannon twisted away, her counterstrike connecting with the woman's shoulder hard enough to send her stumbling. But it wasn't enough. The warrior recovered quickly, pressing her advantage. Rhiannon found herself giving ground, each block requiring more effort than it should. Her technique was all wrong. She knew it. Too cautious, too controlled. Era would have been a storm of motion by now. The warrior's foot caught on an uneven stone. She went down hard, and Rhiannon saw her chance. She dropped onto the woman, getting her into a submission hold that would force a yield. "Enough!" Meredith's voice cut through the arena. "Victory to Era of Silvercrest." The hall erupted in cheers from her pack, but Rhiannon caught the whispers too. The doubting glances. She had won, but not convincingly. Not the way Era would have won. Her father's face was tight with disapproval as she left the arena. She didn't need words to know what he was thinking. Do better. Be better. Be Era. The candidates were given time to rest and recover in the gardens behind the Great Hall. Rhiannon sought out the most secluded corner, needing space from the congratulations that felt like accusations. That was quite a fight. She spun to find Alaric standing a few paces away. Up close, he was even more imposing, broad chest rising and falling with steady breaths. His scent reached her, pine and leather, and something wild that made her wolf whine with recognition. "Thank you." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Though I'm sure it wasn't very impressive by your pack's standards." A smile ghosted across his lips. Every fighter has different strengths. Technique changes with time and training. What worked last year might not serve you as well now. There was something in his tone, a subtle emphasis that made Rhiannon's pulse quicken. Did he know? Could he tell? "Have we met before?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. His green eyes studied her face with unsettling focus. "A long time ago. You probably don't remember. You were young, and I was just another visiting wolf." Something about the way he said it felt significant, but before Rhiannon could pursue the thought, voices approached. Other alphas, coming to congratulate the candidates. Alaric stepped back, his expression smoothing into polite neutrality. "Good luck in the next trial," he said, then melted back into the crowd. Rhiannon stood alone in the garden, her skin still humming from his proximity. Confusion and something dangerously close to attraction warring in her chest. She had no idea who Alaric of Thornvale truly was, but something told her she was about to find out. Chapter 3. Truth in Shadows. The hunting grounds stretched deep into Silvercrest's ancient forest, where towering pines blocked out most of the midday sun, and the air hung thick with the scent of moss and decay. Rhiannon stood at the forest's edge with the other candidates, her heart hammering as Meredith explained the rules of the second trial. "Each of you will hunt alone," the healer announced, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "You must bring back a deer before sunset. Those who return empty-handed will be eliminated. Those who return with lesser prey will be judged accordingly." Rhiannon's wolf stirred beneath her skin, eager for the hunt, but she forced it down, keeping her breathing steady. This was her chance. Fail convincingly here, and no one could question it. Hunting was pure instinct, pure skill. There would be no lucky slips to save her this time. The horn sounded. Rhiannon shifted, bones and muscle reshaping in the familiar agony that always accompanied transformation. Her wolf form was smaller than Era's had been, more compact, built for endurance rather than raw power. Another difference no one had noticed yet. She caught the scent of deer immediately, fresh tracks leading northeast. Instead, she turned south, deliberately choosing a path that would lead her away from the main game trails. The other candidates vanished into the forest, their wolf forms disappearing between the trees with predatory grace. Hours passed. Rhiannon followed false trails, spent time investigating old scents that led nowhere. The sun crawled across the sky, marking her failure with each passing moment. When she finally caught the scent of prey, it was a rabbit, small and lean. Not the impressive kill that would prove her worthy of being Luna. She took it anyway. The return to Silvercrest was a walk of shame. The other 4 candidates had already arrived, each with a deer carcass laid out before them. Proof of their skill, their worthiness. Rhiannon shifted back to human form and placed her pathetic offering at Meredith's feet. The silence in the courtyard was deafening. Then the whispers started, rolling through the gathered packs in waves of disbelief and barely concealed mockery. "Is that a rabbit? Era of Silvercrest, reduced to hunting small game? Perhaps her sister's death affected her more than we thought." Godric's face had gone stone cold with fury. His scent spiked with anger so intense that wolves around him took instinctive steps backward. But he said nothing. Couldn't say anything without revealing the truth of the situation. Meredith studied Rhiannon with ancient eyes that seemed to see too much. "Era of Silvercrest," she said carefully. "You have completed the trial, though your showing was disappointing. You may proceed to the final test." It wasn't a victory. It was pity, and everyone knew it. That night, Godric's rage finally found voice behind the closed doors of his private chambers. Rhiannon stood before him, still in her hunting leathers, blood from the rabbit still staining her hands. "What?" he said, his voice deadly quiet. Was that? I completed the trial. Rhiannon kept her chin up, channeling what little defiance she possessed. I brought back prey. A rabbit. The word dripped with contempt. Your sister would have brought back 3 deer and made it look effortless. Instead, you humiliate this family in front of every pack in the territory. Perhaps you should have thought of that before you forced me into this deception. His hand moved faster than she could track, connecting with her cheek in a blow that sent her stumbling backward. Pain exploded across her face, sharp and immediate. She tasted copper on her tongue. You will do better in the final trial. Godric's voice had dropped to that dangerous place where his wolf pushed too close to the surface. You will be perfect, or I will make you wish your sister had taken you with her when she fell. Godric. Edith appeared in the doorway, her face pale but her voice steady. Enough. This doesn't concern you. She's my daughter. It concerns me greatly. Edith moved between them, a dangerous position when facing an enraged Alpha. You're going to hurt her. She's already hurting this family. But Godric stepped back, some of the fury draining from his expression to be replaced by cold calculation. The final trial is tomorrow. If you fail, Rhiannon, don't bother coming back to this castle. He left, taking his suffocating presence with him. Edith turned to Rhiannon, reaching for her injured face, but Rhiannon pulled away. Don't. The word came out harsh, broken. Just don't. She fled before her mother could respond, before the tears burning behind her eyes could fall. The castle felt like a cage, every stone wall a reminder of expectations she could never meet. She needed air, needed space, needed to be somewhere that didn't smell like her father's disappointment. The forest welcomed her like an old friend. Rhiannon ran through the darkness, letting her wolf guide her to the one place she had always felt safe. The hidden waterfall had been their sanctuary, hers and Era's, a place where they could be themselves instead of the Alpha's daughters. She collapsed beside the pool, finally letting the tears come. Great, heaving sobs that tore from her chest and echoed off the rocks. Everything hurt. Her face where her father had struck her, her heart that still bled for Era, her soul that was being slowly crushed under the weight of being someone she wasn't. You're not very good at pretending to be her. Rhiannon spun, her hand going instinctively to the knife at her belt. Alaric stood at the edge of the clearing, his tall form backlit by moonlight filtering through the trees. His green eyes gleamed in the darkness, tracking her every movement. How did you find me? Her voice came out rough, raw from crying. I followed your scent. He moved closer, each step deliberate and unthreatening. You're upset. I could smell it from the castle. You shouldn't be here. Rhiannon stood, trying to pull together the shreds of her dignity. This is Silvercrest territory. I know where I am. He stopped a few paces away, close enough that she could catch his scent. Pine and leather, and something wild that made her wolf respond with interest. The question is, who are you? Her heart stopped. What? You're not Era. He said it with complete certainty, no room for doubt. I knew the moment I saw you in the Great Hall. The question is whether you're Rhiannon, or someone else entirely. The denial died on her lips. There was no point in lying, not when he was looking at her with those two knowing eyes. How? I spent a summer here, 10 years ago. Diplomatic exchange between our packs, back when we were still allies. Alaric's expression softened slightly. I was 18. You and your sister were 12. I remember you both. Era had a scar on her knee from a training accident. You had one here. His hand lifted, finger pointing at her chin. From falling out of that oak tree near the eastern gate. Rhiannon's hand went unconsciously to the small mark, barely visible in the moonlight. That was a long time ago. Some things stay with you. He took another step closer, and now she could feel the heat radiating from his body. I also received word a week ago that Era had died. An informant in Silvercrest sent news of the accident. The word fell like a stone. You knew she was dead. I knew. His voice carried regret. But I didn't know the circumstances. I certainly didn't expect to see her walking around the Luna trial. Which means either you're a very talented necromancer, or you're her twin sister being forced to take her place. Rhiannon couldn't maintain eye contact anymore. She turned away, wrapping her arms around herself. My father's orders. The pack can't afford to look weak, so he dresses up the spare and hopes no one notices the difference. There was anger in Alaric's voice now, but not directed at her. And you went along with it. Did I have a choice? The words came out bitter, sharp. He's my alpha, my father. When he commands, I obey. Yet you're failing the trials deliberately. It wasn't a question. That hunt today. You're not incompetent, Rhiannon. You're sabotaging yourself. She spun back to face him. You can't possibly know that. I watched you. Alaric's green eyes caught the moonlight, reflecting it back like a predator's. The way you moved in the arena yesterday, deliberately leaving openings that were too obvious to be accidents. The way you chose to hunt in the wrong direction today. You're good enough to know better. Which means you're failing on purpose. And why would I do that? But her heart was racing. Because he had seen through everything. Every carefully orchestrated failure. That's what I'm trying to understand. He was close now. Close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Why would someone go through all this trouble to lose? The truth spilled out before she could stop it. Because I'd rather be banished as myself than live the rest of my life as Era's ghost. Her voice broke on her sister's name. Everyone loved her. She was everything I'm not. Strong, confident, meant to lead. If I become Luna by pretending to be her, then Rhiannon never existed at all. I'll just be the inferior copy of someone better. Something shifted in Alaric's expression. Understanding, perhaps. Or pity. Rhiannon couldn't stand either. You think very little of yourself, he said quietly. I think realistically. She turned away again, unable to bear the intensity of his gaze. You saw me today. That's who I really am. I saw someone deliberately throwing a trial. His voice was closer now, right behind her. I saw someone brave enough to defy her alpha father, even if it means exile. I saw someone choosing her own identity over comfort and safety. You saw someone weak. No. His hand touched her shoulder, gentle but firm, turning her back to face him. I saw someone strong in ways your sister never was. The words hit harder than her father's blow had. Rhiannon felt tears threatening again, but this time from something that might have been gratitude, or hope, or the dangerous warmth that bloomed in her chest whenever Alaric was near. Why do you care? The question came out barely above a whisper. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, wiping away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. The touch sent electricity racing down her spine, made her wolf whine with longing for something she didn't understand. Because, he said, voice rough. I see you, Rhiannon. Not Era. You. They were too close now. She could count the individual whiskers in his beard, see the ring of darker green around his pupils. His scent surrounded her, filled her lungs, made her dizzy with want. Some instinct she didn't recognize pulled her forward, tilting her face up toward his. He leaned down, his breath warm against her lips. For one heartbeat. 2. The world narrowed to just the space between them. Then Rhiannon came to her senses and jerked backward, breaking the spell. I can't. Her voice shook. I don't even know you. Something like disappointment flickered across Alaric's face. But he stepped back, giving her space. You're right. I apologize. Rhiannon? Bryn's voice carried through the forest, distant but approaching. Are you out here? You should go, Rhiannon said quickly. If she finds you here? I know. But Alaric hesitated, his eyes searching her face one more time. The final trial is tomorrow. What will you do? What I have to. The answer was automatic, learned from years of obedience. Or, he said softly, you could do what you want. He was gone before she could respond, disappearing into the forest like a ghost. Rhiannon stood alone by the waterfall, her lips still tingling from the kiss that hadn't happened, her mind racing with everything he had said. Bryn emerged from the trees moments later, her worried expression easing when she saw Rhiannon. There you are. I've been looking everywhere. Are you all right? No. The honesty felt strange, liberating. But I will be. She just had to survive one more trial. Then, one way or another, this nightmare would be over. Chapter 4. Unmasking. The Great Hall was packed tighter than it had been for the first 2 trials. Word of Rhiannon's dismal performance in the hunt had spread through every pack like wildfire. drawing wolves who wanted to witness the final humiliation of Silvercrest's heir, or what they thought was Silvercrest's heir. Rhiannon stood among the other 4 candidates, her hands clenched at her sides to hide their trembling. This was it. The final trial. After this, one way or another, the charade would be over. Meredith raised her gnarled staff for silence. The ancient healer's eyes swept over the assembled candidates before settling on the crowd. "The final trial tests not strength of body," she announced, her voice carrying through the stone chamber, "but wisdom of mind and heart. Aluna must be able to resolve conflicts within her pack, to see beyond immediate gains to long-term prosperity." 2 wolves were brought forward, both from a neutral pack. They carried themselves with the rigid posture of those locked in bitter dispute. Meredith gestured to them. "These warriors both claim rights to the same hunting grounds along the river border. Each has valid arguments. Each has support within their pack. A poor decision will fracture pack unity. A wise decision will strengthen it." She turned to the candidates. "You will each propose a solution. The pack elders will judge which answer shows the greatest wisdom." The first candidate stepped forward, a tall woman from the Northern Territories. Her solution was practical, dividing the territory based on seasonal migration patterns of prey. Solid, logical, uninspired. The second candidate proposed a rotation system. The third suggested expanding the territory through negotiation with neighboring packs. Both solutions were competent, showing strategic thinking and concern for pack welfare. Then it was Rhiannon's turn. This was her moment. The last chance to fail so spectacularly that no one could question it. She stepped forward, her mind already formulating the most absurd solution she could conceive. Something that would violate pack traditions. Something that would make every wolf in the room question her fitness to lead. "I propose," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "that neither warrior receive the territory. Instead, it should be designated as neutral ground, open to all pack members equally, with no hierarchy of access." Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Such an arrangement went against fundamental pack structure. Hierarchies existed for a reason. Eliminating them would create chaos, not unity. "Explain your reasoning." Meredith's expression was unreadable, but her tone suggested she was giving Rhiannon rope to hang herself with. Rhiannon opened her mouth to deliver more nonsense, to cement her failure, but something broke inside her. Maybe it was exhaustion from days of living as someone else. Maybe it was Alaric's words at the waterfall, telling her she was strong in her own right. Maybe it was just that she was so tired of being afraid. "Because traditions," she said, and her voice gained strength with each word, "don't always serve the pack. Sometimes they serve only those who benefit from keeping others in their place." She looked directly at her father, saw his eyes narrow with warning. She continued anyway. "We trap people in roles they never chose, in lives they never wanted, and call it duty. We sacrifice individual happiness for some vague notion of the greater good, never questioning whether that good is really as great as we claim." The hall had gone silent. Rhiannon could feel the weight of every gaze, but she couldn't stop now. The words poured out, raw and honest, and probably suicidal. A true Luna shouldn't just maintain tradition. She should question it. She should ask whether the way things have always been done is actually the way they should continue. Because sometimes, the greatest strength isn't in following the old paths. It's in having the courage to forge new ones. For a moment, the silence was absolute. Then whispers erupted, some scandalized, some thoughtful. Rhiannon saw several younger wolves nodding, their expressions considering. But she also saw the elders shaking their heads, faces set in disapproval. She had done it. She had failed so thoroughly that even her father's political connections couldn't save her now. "That's enough." Godric's voice cut through the noise. "Clearly my daughter is unwell. Grief has affected her judgment. This isn't Era." The voice came from near the entrance. Bryn stood there, her face pale, but her voice clear. She pushed through the crowd, and Rhiannon saw tears streaming down her friend's face. "Bryn, don't..." Rhiannon started, but Bryn shook her head. "I can't watch you destroy yourself." Bryn's voice broke. "This isn't Era of Silvercrest. This is Rhiannon, her twin sister. Era died 2 weeks ago in a fall from the eastern cliffs. There had been days between the fall and the funeral, and then the trials had stretched the rest. The count in Bryn's mouth was grimly precise. Alpha Godric forced Rhiannon to take her place to avoid appearing weak. Chaos exploded. Wolves surged to their feet, voices rising in outrage and disbelief. Godric moved toward Bryn with murder in his eyes, but several pack members blocked his path, their expressions demanding answers. "This is absurd," Godric snarled. "The girl is delusional." "I'm not." Bryn stood her ground. Era had a scar on her knee from training. Rhiannon has one on her chin. Anyone who knew them as children would remember. Anyone who bothered to look closely would see the truth. Meredith moved to Rhiannon, her ancient eyes studying her face with unnerving intensity. "Show me your chin, child." Rhiannon tilted her head up. The small scar, barely visible but undeniably there, marked her as someone other than Era. Meredith's expression shifted from stern to something almost sad. "The trial is invalid," she announced. "Sacred law has been violated. The penalty for such deception is banishment from all pack territories." Edith finally found her voice. "Please," she was following her Alpha's orders. Silence. Godric's hand shot out, not quite striking his mate, but the threat clear. Edith flinched backward, and something flickered across her face. Fear, yes, but also a spark of something that might have been anger. The Alpha commanded this? One of the visiting elders stood, his voice heavy with condemnation. He forced his own daughter to dishonor sacred ritual. The crowd's mood shifted, turning from Rhiannon to Godric. But the damage was done. Rhiannon would still be banished. And in wolf society, that was a death sentence. Lone wolves rarely survived more than a season. Wait. The single word cut through the chaos like a blade. Alaric rose from his place among the observing Alphas, his presence commanding immediate attention. "I invoke the right of prior claim." Godric's face went apoplectic. "You have no right. Ancestral law gives any Alpha the right to claim a candidate before banishment is enacted." Alaric's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "I invoke that right now." He descended from the platform, moving through the crowd with predatory grace. Wolves instinctively cleared a path for him. When he reached Rhiannon, his green eyes met hers, asking a question she didn't understand. "Rhiannon of Silvercrest," he said formally. "I claim you as my mate, and Luna of Thornvale Pack." "She's worthless," Godric spat. "She failed every trial. She has no value as a Luna." Alaric turned to face him, and his expression was colder than Rhiannon had ever seen. "On the contrary, I've watched her carefully these past days. I've seen someone willing to sacrifice her own future rather than live a lie. Someone brave enough to speak truth to an Alpha, even knowing the cost. Someone intelligent enough to maintain a deception under impossible pressure, and strong enough to finally reject it." He looked back at Rhiannon. "Those are the qualities of a true Luna. Not perfect adherence to tradition, but the courage to question it. Not strength of claw, but strength of conviction." Before Rhiannon could process what was happening, Alaric's hand cupped the back of her neck. Gentle but inexorable, his eyes held hers. Intense and burning with something she was afraid to name. "This will hurt," he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. "But it will save your life. Trust me." Then his teeth were at her throat, breaking skin in the ancient claiming bite. Pain lanced through her, sharp and immediate. But underneath it, something else bloomed. Heat that had nothing to do with the wound, spreading from the bite through her entire body. A connection snapping into place, foreign emotions flooding her consciousness. His emotions, his certainty, his protectiveness, his desire. And underneath it all, a recognition so profound it stole her breath. Mate. The word echoed through her mind in a voice that was both hers and not hers. Her wolf, usually so quiet, roared to life with sudden understanding. This was why his presence had affected her so strongly. Why his scent made her dizzy. Why his touch felt like coming home. Alaric released her throat, his tongue sweeping over the wound once to seal it. The bite mark would remain, visible proof of his claim. When he stepped back, Rhiannon swayed, overwhelmed by the bond now pulsing between them. "It's done," Alaric announced to the hall. "By ancestral law, she is mine. Any who challenge this claim challenges Thornvale directly. No one moved. No one dared. Claiming was sacred, inviolable. Even Godric, his face twisted with impotent rage, could do nothing. Rhiannon touched her neck, feeling the tender mark. Her life had just changed irrevocably, and she hadn't even been given a choice. Saved from one cage only to be thrust into another. But when her eyes met Alaric's, she saw something there that Godric had never shown her. Respect. And maybe, just maybe, something more. Chapter 5. Chains of Gold. The journey to Thornvale took 2 days on horseback, and Rhiannon spent every moment of it seething. She rode beside Alaric, acutely aware of his presence in ways she had never experienced before. The mate bond pulsed between them, a living thing that demanded acknowledgement. She could feel him, his emotions bleeding into her consciousness. Concern, determination, satisfaction, and underneath it all, a possessive pride that made her want to scream. He had claimed her, marked her, changed her entire existence with a single bite. And he hadn't even asked. "You're angry." Alaric's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. He didn't look at her, keeping his eyes on the forest path ahead. "I can feel it through the bond." "Can you?" The words came out sharp, caustic. "How convenient for you. Now you get to experience my emotions without my consent. Just like you did everything else." That made him glance over. His green eyes studied her face, and she hated how her body responded to even that simple attention. Heat bloomed beneath her skin, her wolf practically purring at his proximity. "I saved your life." No apology. Just statement of fact. "You trapped me." Rhiannon's hands clenched on her reins. Banishment would have been my choice. "This," she gestured between them, "is yours. Banishment is death for lone wolves. You know this. Then perhaps I would have preferred death to belonging to someone who sees me as property to claim." Silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. When Alaric finally spoke again, his voice had gone quiet. "Dangerous. Is that what you think? That I see you as property? Don't you?" She turned to face him fully, anger and hurt warring in her chest. "You didn't ask, Alaric. You didn't give me a choice. You just took what you wanted. Consequences be damned." His jaw clenched, muscle jumping beneath his beard. "The law required—" "I don't care about the law." The words burst out of her, raw and honest. "I've spent my entire life being told what to do, who to be, how to act. My father forced me to pretend to be Era. You forced me to be your mate. Where in any of this was my choice?" Alaric pulled his horse to a stop. Rhiannon kept riding for a few paces before realizing he wasn't following. When she turned back, he was staring at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You're right." The admission seemed to cost him something. "I should have asked. But Rhiannon, your father was about to let you die rather than admit his deception. I had seconds to act. Would you have said yes if I'd asked?" The question hung between them. Rhiannon wanted to say no, to maintain her righteous anger. But the truth was more complicated. She had felt the pull toward him from the moment their eyes met in the great hall. Something deep and instinctive had recognized him, wanted him, even before she understood what it meant. "I don't know," she finally admitted, "but I should have been given the chance to find out." They rode in silence after that, the bond between them a constant reminder of what had been forced and what might have been chosen. As the sun began to set on their first day of travel, Tavish, Alaric's beta, found them a sheltered clearing to make camp. Rhiannon dismounted stiffly, her body aching from hours in the saddle. She moved to the far side of the clearing, needing distance from Alaric's overwhelming presence. But the bond stretched between them, uncomfortable when they were apart. She touched the mark on her neck, feeling the raised skin where his teeth had broken through. The wound had healed with supernatural speed, but the brand remained. Everyone who saw it would know she belonged to someone. "Here." Alaric appeared beside her, holding out dried meat and bread. "You need to eat." Rhiannon took the food without looking at him. "Thank you." He didn't leave. Instead, he settled onto a fallen log nearby, close enough that she could feel his warmth, but far enough to give her space. The consideration made her anger falter slightly. "I've known you were my mate since you were 20. he said quietly. When you reached full maturity, the bond activated. I could scent you from miles away, feel the pull toward you even though we were in different territories. Rhiannon froze, the bread halfway to her mouth. 4 years? You've known for 4 years and said nothing? Ancestral law forbids an alpha from pursuing a Luna candidate from another pack during trial preparations. It's considered interference, an attempt to steal valuable members before they can strengthen their home pack. His expression was grim. If I had approached you, it could have sparked war between Silvercrest and Thornvale. Our packs were already enemies. One wrong move could have destroyed any chance of peace. So you just watched. The thought made her skin prickle. You watched me for 4 years and did nothing. I watched to make sure you were safe. Something fierce entered his voice. I had informants who told me when you were unhappy, when your father pushed you too hard, when Era overshadowed you. I wanted to claim you 1,000 times, Rhiannon, but I couldn't, not without breaking laws that would have put you in even more danger. She turned to look at him fully. In the firelight, his features seemed softer, more vulnerable than she had seen them. The trial was your first legal opportunity. After banishment was declared, yes. A claiming at that moment supersedes pack law. It was the only way. He met her gaze steadily. I won't apologize for saving you, but I am sorry you didn't get the choice. The sincerity in his voice undid something in Rhiannon's chest. She was still angry, still felt the violation of having her agency stripped away, but she could also see the impossible position he had been in. Can you undo it? The question came out smaller than she intended. The claim. The bond. Can it be broken? Pain flickered across his face. No. Once a mate bond is completed through claiming, it's permanent. Breaking it would require one of us to die. So I'm truly trapped. The words tasted like ash. Or, Alaric said carefully, you could choose to stay. Not because you're forced, but because you want to. Rhiannon laughed, bitter and sharp. Want to? I don't even know you. Then get to know me. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I won't force anything beyond what's necessary to maintain the bond. You have your own chambers in Thornvale, your own space. I'll give you time, Rhiannon, as much as you need. And if I never want this, what then? Then I'll spend the rest of my life hoping you change your mind. The raw honesty in his voice stole her breath. This wasn't the arrogant alpha she had expected. This was someone genuinely trying to make the best of an impossible situation. They reached Thornvale the following evening. The castle rose from the forest, stone walls covered in climbing ivy and window boxes overflowing with late-season flowers. Where Silvercrest had been all hard edges and military precision, Thornvale felt alive, welcoming. Pack members emerged to greet them, their faces curious but not hostile. Rhiannon had expected judgment, perhaps even resentment toward the claimed outsider. Instead, they offered respectful nods and genuine smiles. Welcome to Thornvale, Luna, an older woman said, bowing slightly. We're honored to have you. Luna. The title felt foreign on her shoulders, heavy with responsibility she hadn't earned. But these wolves looked at her with expectation, waiting to see what kind of leader she would be. Alaric led her inside, through corridors that smelled of pine and wood smoke rather than stone and steel. Her chambers were in the eastern wing, spacious and bright, with windows overlooking gardens that still bloomed despite the approaching autumn. These are yours, Alaric said from the doorway. No one will enter without your permission. Not even me. Rhiannon explored the space, taking in the large bed, the writing desk, the bathing room with a copper tub. It was more than she had ever had at Silvercrest. More privacy, more freedom. Thank you, she said, and meant it. Alaric nodded, then hesitated. There's a council meeting tomorrow. Pack business. You're welcome to attend if you'd like. I value good counsel, and you showed wisdom during the trial. The offer surprised her. You want my opinion on pack matters? You're Luna now. Your voice matters. He paused. But only if you're ready. No pressure. After he left, Rhiannon sank onto the bed, exhaustion finally catching up with her. The mate bond hummed quietly, a constant reminder of Alaric's presence somewhere in the castle. She reached for it experimentally, following the thread of connection. His emotions washed over her. relief that they had arrived safely, concern for her well-being, and underneath it all, a fierce protectiveness that should have felt suffocating, but instead felt oddly comforting. Perhaps, she thought as sleep claimed her, this cage was lined with gold instead of iron. Perhaps being trapped here wouldn't be the worst thing that could have happened, but she still wished it had been her choice. The next morning, a messenger arrived from Silvercrest. Rhiannon was in the gardens when Alaric found her, his expression grave. "Your father is demanding your return," he said without preamble. "He claims you were taken against your will. If I don't send you back within 3 days, Silvercrest will consider it an act of war." Rhiannon's blood went cold. War between packs meant death, devastation, all because she had dared to be someone other than who her father wanted. I should go back. The words felt like poison on her tongue. I should face him and prevent this. Absolutely not. Alaric's voice went hard. He'll kill you, Rhiannon. I'm certain of it. And if I don't go, how many will die in a war that's my fault? His hand cupped her face, gentle but inexorable. None of this is your fault. Your father created this situation with his lies and manipulation. I won't let him destroy you to cover his own sins. Rhiannon wanted to believe him. But the weight of potential deaths pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. War was coming, and somehow, she would have to find a way to stop it. Chapter 6. Buried Truths. 2 weeks in Thornvale had done something unexpected to Rhiannon. It had given her space to breathe. She stood in the council chamber, listening as pack members debated the merits of expanding their trade agreements with a neighboring pack. The discussion had grown heated, voices rising as 2 factions argued their positions with increasing fervor. Enough. Alaric's voice cut through the noise, commanding without shouting. Rhiannon, you've been quiet. What do you think? Every eye in the room turned to her. A few weeks ago, the attention would have paralyzed her. Now, having spent days observing how Thornvale operated, she found her voice. Both sides have merit, she said carefully. But you're focused on immediate gains rather than long-term relationships. Trade agreements should strengthen bonds between packs, not just fill coffers. Perhaps, instead of choosing one proposal, we combine them. Expand trade, but do it gradually, building trust with each successful exchange. Silence fell. Then Tavish, Alaric's beta, nodded slowly. That's actually brilliant. We avoid overcommitting while still showing good faith. The debate resumed, but with her suggestion as the new foundation. When the meeting concluded, several pack members approached her with respect in their eyes, thanking her for the wisdom. It felt strange. Good. But strange. Later, in the gardens where late autumn roses still clung to life, Alaric found her. The mate bond had grown familiar now, a constant awareness of his location, his emotional state. She felt his approach before she heard his footsteps. You did well in there, he said, settling onto the stone bench beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched, far enough to give her space. He always gave her space. I just said what made sense. But pleasure bloomed warm in her chest at the praise. You saw what others missed. His green eyes caught the fading sunlight. That's your gift, Rhiannon. Reading people. Understanding what drives them. Finding solutions that serve everyone. Thornvale needs that. I need that. The admission made her pulse quicken. Over the past 2 weeks, her anger had gradually transformed into something more complicated. She still resented the lack of choice. But she couldn't deny that Alaric had kept every promise he'd made. Her chambers remained her own. He never pushed, never demanded. He simply existed beside her, steady and patient, waiting for her to come to him rather than forcing her hand. I've been thinking, she said quietly, about Era, about how she died. Alaric's expression sobered. What about it? Something doesn't add up. Era was the most sure-footed climber in Silvercrest. She could navigate those cliffs blind. How does someone like that just fall? Accidents happen, even to the skilled. Or it wasn't an accident at all. The thought had been growing in her mind for days, taking shape like a shadow solidifying into something real and terrible. What if my father needed her gone? Alaric was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I've had similar thoughts, which is why I've had Tavish making inquiries." Discreetly, hope and dread warred in Rhiannon's chest. "Have you learned anything? We found someone. A wolf who was near the eastern cliffs the day Era died. He's agreed to speak with us, but only if we guarantee his safety." Alaric stood, offering his hand. "Are you ready to hear the truth?" Rhiannon took his hand, feeling the now familiar jolt of connection. "I have to be. The witness was a young warrior named Hugh, brought to Thornvale under cover of darkness. Fear rolled off him in waves, his scent sharp with anxiety as he stood before them in Alaric's private study. "I saw Oswin," Hugh said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Godric's beta. He was coming down from the cliffs right after Era fell. His hands were bloody, and he looked—" Hugh swallowed hard. He looked satisfied. Rhiannon's world tilted. "You're saying Oswin pushed her? I can't prove it. But I know what I saw." Hugh's hands trembled. "And I know Oswin reported finding her body 30 minutes later, claiming he'd been on the opposite side of the territory. He lied about where he was. Why lie unless there's something to hide?" After Hugh was escorted to safe quarters, Rhiannon sank into a chair, her mind reeling. Alaric knelt before her, his hands covering hers. "We need more than one witness's word," he said gently. "But it's a start. Tavish has men watching Oswin's movements. If he ventures into neutral territory, we can take him without sparking immediate conflict. My father ordered this." The words felt like stones in Rhiannon's mouth. "He had his own daughter murdered. We don't know that for certain yet, don't we?" She looked at Alaric through tears she couldn't hold back. "He forced me to take her place, to live as her ghost. Why would he do that unless keeping the line of succession intact mattered more than either of our lives?" Alaric pulled her forward, wrapping her in his arms. The mate bond flared, and she felt his rage on her behalf, his grief for what she was learning, his fierce determination to protect her from further harm. It should have felt suffocating. Instead, it felt like being anchored in a storm. 3 days later, opportunity presented itself. Oswin had been spotted traveling through neutral forest, alone. Alaric's warriors moved swiftly, capturing him before he could raise an alarm. They brought him to Thornvale bound and furious, his eyes blazing with defiance as he was forced to his knees in the same chamber where the council met. "You have no right," Oswin snarled. "I'm Beta of Silvercrest. This is an act of war. You were seen," Alaric said coldly. "The day Era died, coming down from the cliffs with blood on your hands." Something flickered across Oswin's face. Fear, quickly masked. "I found her body. Of course there was blood. You reported finding her 30 minutes later on the opposite side of the territory." Rhiannon stepped forward, her voice steady despite the rage burning in her veins. "You lied about your location. Why?" "I was confused. Grief. Don't." The word cracked like a whip. "Don't you dare speak of grief when you're the one who caused it. Did my father order you to kill her?" The silence stretched. Then Oswin laughed, bitter and harsh. "You really don't know, do you? Neither of you had any idea what she was planning. Tell us." Alaric's voice dropped to that dangerous place where his alpha nature pushed close to the surface. "She was pregnant," Oswin spat, "carrying the child of some common warrior. Planning to run away, abandon her duty, expose Godric's dealings with corrupt members of the Alpha King's Council." His lips curled into a sneer. "She was going to destroy everything your father built, Rhiannon." He had no choice. The words hit like physical blows. Pregnant. Era had been pregnant. Planning to flee, to expose corruption, to reject the very role Rhiannon had been forced into. "So you pushed her." Rhiannon's voice came from somewhere far away, hollow and cold. "I did what was necessary for the pack. You murdered my sister and her unborn child." The words ripped from Rhiannon's throat. "My niece. My nephew. They're gone because you and my father decided they were inconvenient." The grief crashed over her then, massive and overwhelming. Not just for Era anymore, but for the innocent life that had never had a chance to begin. For the sister who had been braver than anyone knew, who had chosen love over duty, and paid for it with her life. Her knees gave out. Alaric caught her before she hit the floor, pulling her against his chest. The bond opened completely, and she felt him taking her anguish into himself, absorbing what he could so she wouldn't have to bear it alone. "Take him to the cells," Alaric ordered over her head. "Double guard. He doesn't eat, sleep, or breathe without someone watching." Later, when the storm of grief had passed enough for her to function, Rhiannon found herself in Alaric's chambers. She didn't remember how she'd gotten there, only that being close to him eased the raw wound in her chest. "Era was going to do what I didn't have the courage to," she said, staring at the fire crackling in the hearth. She was going to reject it all and choose her own path. And she paid the price. Alaric sat beside her, close enough that his warmth seeped into her bones. "I'm sorry, Rhiannon, for what was done to her, for what was done to you." She turned to look at him. Really look at him. In the firelight, his features seemed softer, the hard edges of the alpha giving way to the man underneath, the man who had been patient with her anger, who had given her space and time, who had just held her while she shattered. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being here, for not forcing me to face this alone. You'll never be alone again." His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "Not if I have anything to say about it." The kiss happened without thought, without planning. One moment they were looking at each other. The next, her lips were on his, desperate and hungry and searching for something to ease the pain. He responded immediately, his arms coming around her, pulling her closer until there was no space between them. It wasn't gentle. It was grief and need, and the overwhelming relief of connection, of not being alone in the darkness. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rhiannon pressed her forehead against his. "I'm still angry," she said. "About the claim, about not having a choice. I know." His voice was rough, strained. "But I think..." She pulled back to meet his eyes. "I think I'm starting to understand why you did it. And maybe, eventually, I can forgive you for it." Before Alaric could respond, Tavish burst through the door, his face pale with urgency. "Alpha, we have a problem. Bryn just arrived. She says Godric knows about Oswin's capture. He's mobilizing the entire Silvercrest pack for war." Chapter 7. Blood Under Moonless Skies. The attack came on the night of the waxing gibbous, when darkness hung heaviest over the forest and Shifter's strength ran weakest. Rhiannon woke to the sound of warning bells, their frantic clanging cutting through the pre-dawn silence like screams. "They're here." Alaric was already dressed, strapping on his sword belt with swift efficiency. Through the mate bond, she felt his battle focus, sharp and deadly. "Stay in the castle. The walls are..." "No." Rhiannon was on her feet, reaching for the leather armor Thornvale's craftsman had made for her. "I won't hide while your pack fights for my safety." "Rhiannon, he's my father." The words tasted like poison. "This is my fight as much as yours." Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Understanding, perhaps. Respect. Then Alaric nodded once, sharp and decisive. "Stay close to me. Don't take unnecessary risks." The battle at Thornvale's northern border was chaos incarnate. Silvercrest warriors poured from the tree line in wolf form, their howls splitting the night. Thornvale met them with organized ferocity, defending their territory with the desperation of those protecting home and family. Rhiannon shifted, her wolf form smaller and leaner than most around her. But where others charged forward with brute strength, she moved with purpose. She had spent weeks observing Thornvale's warriors, learning their patterns, their strengths. Now she used that knowledge, calling out positions through the pack bond, coordinating strikes that maximized their advantages. A Silvercrest wolf lunged for a young Thornvale warrior's exposed flank. Rhiannon intercepted, driving the attacker back with snapping jaws. Not the strongest fighter, but smart enough to read the flow of battle, to be where she was needed most. "Luna's organizing the western flank," she heard someone shout. "Follow her lead." It felt strange, being listened to, being valued for what she could actually do, rather than what she was supposed to be. Then she caught his scent. Pine and rage and murderous intent. Godric emerged from the forest in his massive alpha form, easily twice the size of any wolf on the field. His eyes scanned the battle, searching, and when they found her, they burned with single-minded hatred. He wanted her dead, needed her dead. She was the proof of his crimes, the witness to his manipulation. As long as she lived, his power remained threatened. Godric charged through his own warriors, heedless of who he trampled. Rhiannon's wolf froze, prey instinct screaming at her to run. But before she could move, Alaric was there, intercepting his father mid-leap. The two alphas collided with bone-crushing force. Alaric was younger, faster, but Godric fought with the desperation of someone with everything to lose. They tore at each other, blood darkening their fur, snarls echoing across the battlefield. Rhiannon watched in horror as Godric's jaws closed around Alaric's throat. Not quite crushing, but the threat clear. One wrong move, and her mate would die. She didn't think. Couldn't think. Her body moved on pure instinct, transforming mid-leap into her wolf form and launching herself at her father's exposed back. Her teeth sank into his shoulder, tearing through muscle. Godric released Alaric with a roar of pain and fury, spinning to face his daughter. For one heartbeat, their eyes met. His held no recognition, no love, just cold calculation and murder. He threw her. His massive paw connected with her ribs, sending her flying through the air like a discarded toy. She hit a tree trunk with devastating force, feeling something inside her crack and splinter. Pain exploded through her body, white-hot and all-consuming. Rhiannon tried to rise, but her legs wouldn't support her. Blood filled her mouth, copper-tasting and wrong. Through the haze of agony, she saw Alaric transform back to human form, saw the rage twisting his features as he realized she was hurt. The fight that followed was brutal. Alaric fought with the fury of a mate defending his bond, every strike calculated to maim, to punish. Godric was strong, but his earlier injuries had weakened him. Slowly, inevitably, Alaric drove him down. When Godric finally collapsed, Alaric's hand closed around his throat, claws extended. One squeeze and it would be over. Justice for Era, for the unborn child, for Rhiannon. No. The word came out as a wheeze, but somehow Alaric heard it. Don't. Rhiannon dragged herself forward, each movement agony. Her ribs screamed protest, and she was fairly certain something was bleeding internally. But she needed to face him. Needed to say this. You lost both of us, she said, forcing the words past blood and pain. Era died running from you. I left choosing someone else. You murdered your own grandchild before it could even draw breath. And for what? Power? Control? She coughed, tasting more blood. You have no daughters now. No heirs. Nothing. Godric stared at her. And for just a moment she thought she saw regret flicker across his features. Then it was gone, replaced by cold defiance. I did what was necessary. You did what was monstrous. Edith's voice cut through the clearing, steady and strong. She stood at the forest edge, having followed the army on foot. Her amber eyes, so like her daughter's, blazed with long-suppressed fury. I let you control me for years. Let you hurt our daughters because I was too afraid to stand against you. But no more. She walked forward, addressing the gathered Silvercrest warriors. This male is no alpha. He ordered the murder of his own child. He forced Rhiannon to dishonor sacred ritual. He has brought war upon us for his own pride. Her voice strengthened. I invoke the right to challenge. Any who stand with me, step forward now. The silence stretched. Then, one by one, Silvercrest wolves moved to stand beside Edith. Young and old, warrior and elder. Not all of them, but enough. A senior beta stepped forward, his face grave. By pack law, I challenge Alpha Godric for leadership of Silvercrest. The evidence of his crimes is overwhelming. Step down, or face judgment. Before Godric could respond, the sound of hoofbeats thundered through the forest. A contingent of warriors bearing the Alpha King's banner emerged from the trees, led by a scarred wolf in human form, whose presence radiated ancient authority. That won't be necessary. The King's representative's voice carried absolute command. The Alpha King has been investigating Silvercrest's dealings for weeks. Corruption, treaty violations, and now murder. his eyes fixed on Godric. "Alpha Godric of Silvercrest, you are under arrest by order of the king. Oswin, Beta of Silvercrest, the same applies to you." The battle was over. Silvercrest warriors, seeing their Alpha captured and their Beta in chains, laid down their arms. Thornvale's warriors secured the perimeter, tending to wounded on both sides. Rhiannon barely registered any of it. The world had gone gray at the edges, narrowing to a tunnel of pain. She felt Alaric's arms around her, heard his voice calling her name, but it seemed very far away. "Get the healers!" His command cracked like thunder. "Now!" They laid her in the great hall, on a table cleared hastily of everything else. Thornvale's head healer, an ancient woman named Marin, examined her with gentle but thorough hands. When she finally spoke, her expression was grave. "The internal injuries are severe. Normally they would be fatal." She touched the claiming mark on Rhiannon's neck. "This is keeping her alive. The mate bond is feeding her your strength, Alpha. But it's a temporary measure. How do we save her?" Alaric's voice was raw with desperation. "The bond must be completed. Full consummation under the full moon will provide enough power to heal even these injuries." Marin glanced at the window, where the barest sliver of moon was beginning to wax. 3 days. She has 3 days. Rhiannon's eyes fluttered open, finding Alaric's face above her. Even through the pain, she could feel his fear bleeding through the bond, his desperate need to protect what was his. 3 days, she whispered. "I can last 3 days." His hand found hers, gripping tight enough to hurt. "You'll last a lifetime. I won't lose you, Rhiannon. Not now. Not ever." As consciousness fled, taking the pain with it into blessed darkness, Rhiannon's last thought was that she believed him. For the first time since the claiming, she truly believed he would move heaven and earth to keep her alive. She just hoped 3 days was enough. Chapter 8. Choosing Tomorrow. 3 days felt like an eternity when measured in breaths that grew shallower with each passing hour. Rhiannon drifted through darkness, awareness coming and going like tides. Sometimes she surfaced enough to feel Alaric's hand gripping hers, to hear his voice speaking words she couldn't quite grasp. Other times, there was only the pain, dull and persistent, eating away at her from the inside. Through it all, the mate bond held. A golden thread connecting her to life, to him. Keeping death at bay through sheer force of will, she could feel him feeding her strength, pouring his own vitality into the connection between them, keeping her alive even as it drained him. On the morning of the 3rd day, Rhiannon opened her eyes. The chamber was dim, curtains drawn against the morning light. But she could make out Alaric's form slumped in a chair beside her bed. Dark circles beneath his eyes, his beard more unkempt than she had ever seen it. He looked exhausted, hollowed out, as if he had been fighting a war with no end in sight. "Alaric." Her voice came out as barely a whisper, rough from disuse. His eyes snapped open immediately, and the relief that flooded through the bond was so intense it brought tears to her eyes. He was at her side in an instant, his hand finding hers, his other cupping her face with infinite gentleness. "You're awake." The words carried the weight of answered prayers. "Thank the gods, you're awake." How long? She tried to sit up, but pain lanced through her ribs. She was weaker than she had realized, her body a fragile thing that barely responded to her commands. 3 days. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "The full moon rises tonight." The significance of his words settled over her slowly. Tonight, the deadline Marin had given them. Complete the bond or die. "I need to tell you something." Alaric's voice was rough, strained. "Before tonight, before you make any decisions." He took a shuddering breath. "The bond we have now, the claiming bite, it's keeping you alive, but only just. Without the full consummation under the moon, you'll die when the lunar power fades. Probably within hours." Rhiannon nodded slowly. She had suspected as much. "But I won't force this." His green eyes held hers with desperate intensity. "If you choose not to complete the bond, if you'd rather die free than live bound to me, I'll respect that choice. It will kill me too, eventually, but at least you'll have had agency in your own end." The offer hung between them, genuine and heartbreaking. He was giving her what he had taken away before. The choice. Why? The question slipped out. You could just take what you need. The bond gives you that right, because you deserve better than what I've given you. His voice broke slightly. You deserve choice from the beginning, and I took that from you. I won't make that mistake again, even if it costs me everything. Rhiannon stared at him. This alpha who had claimed her, marked her, bound her to him without permission, but who had also given her space when she needed it, valued her mind when others dismissed her, stood beside her rather than over her, who was willing to die rather than force her again. Tell me something, she said quietly. In all the time we've been bonded, have you ever used alpha compulsion on me? Ever commanded me to do something against my will? He shook his head. Never. I swore I wouldn't. And my chambers? My privacy? Have you violated that? Not once. When I spoke in council meetings, when I offered opinions that contradicted yours, did you silence me? Never. His hand tightened on hers. Your voice matters, Rhiannon. Your thoughts, your wisdom. I've never wanted to silence that. She was quiet for a long moment, thinking about everything that had happened. The forced substitution, the failed trials, the claiming that had saved her life but stolen her choice, and then everything after. The weeks in Thornvale where she had been allowed to simply be herself, where her diplomatic skills had been praised rather than dismissed, where she had been seen, truly seen, for the first time in her life. I spent my whole life being told I wasn't enough, she said softly, that I was the disappointment, the spare, the one who should have been more like Era. My father saw me as a tool to be used. Even my mother, who loved me, couldn't stand up for who I really was. Alaric's jaw clenched, but he remained silent, letting her speak. Then you came along and claimed me without asking. Took away my agency just like everyone else had done. She watched his face, saw the pain flicker across it. But then you did something no one else ever had. You gave it back. His breath caught. You gave me space. You gave me time. You gave me a voice in your pack and respected what I had to say. You never once tried to make me into something I wasn't. Her own eyes were wet now. The claiming wasn't my choice. But staying, building a life here, being your Luna, that can be. Rhiannon. Choice had once meant walking away. Now it meant standing beside those who had come to depend on her. Power, she realized, wasn't the right to leave. It was the courage to remain and be accountable. I choose to stay. The words came out strong, certain. I choose to complete the bond. Not because I'm forced. Not because I'm afraid of dying. But because I want to. Because you've shown me what it means to be truly seen and valued. Because when I imagine my future, I see you in it. He pressed his forehead against hers, his breath shuddering. Are you certain? I've never been more certain of anything. She managed a weak smile. Though I'll probably be angry at you again at some point. We're mates, not saints. His laugh was watery, relieved. I can live with that. That night, as the full moon rose over Thornvale, Alaric carried Rhiannon to the highest tower of the castle. The chamber there had been prepared, candles burning, windows open to let moonlight stream across the stone floor. What happened between them was intimate, sacred, theirs alone. The consummation of a bond that had begun with force but was ending with choice. Every touch was reverent, every kiss a promise. When the moon reached its zenith and the bond solidified completely, Rhiannon felt the transformation wash through her. Her wounds healed in moments, ribs knitting back together, internal bleeding stopping, strength flooding back into her limbs. But more than that, the connection between them deepened into something unbreakable. She could feel him, not just his emotions, but his very essence. And she knew he felt the same. They were truly one now, bonded in every way that mattered. The formal ceremony came a week later, when Rhiannon had regained her full strength. She stood before the gathered Thornvale pack, no longer wearing Era's clothes, no longer trying to be anyone but herself. I present to you Rhiannon, Luna of Thornvale, Alaric announced, his pride evident in every word. My mate, my equal, my counsel. The pack's acceptance was genuine, their respect earned through weeks of watching her work, seeing her wisdom in action. When an old territorial dispute arose during the ceremony, Rhiannon stepped forward and mediated a solution that left both parties satisfied. The pack's approval was thunderous. Bryn arrived the next day, accepting Rhiannon's offer to join Thornvale as her personal advisor. The reunion was tearful, joyful, healing. "I'm so glad you chose this," Bryn said, embracing her friend tightly. "You deserve to be happy." Edith came a week after that, humble and hesitant. She stood before Rhiannon in the great hall, her hands twisting nervously. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she said quietly. "I should have protected you better. Should have stood up to your father years ago." Rhiannon studied her mother, seeing the weight of regret in her amber eyes. "You were a victim too. Of his control, his violence. I understand that now. Still, I should have been braver. For you and Ira both, you were brave when it mattered most." Rhiannon stepped forward, taking her mother's hands. "You stood against him in the end. That takes courage. They would never be close, not the way mothers and daughters should be. Too much pain lay between them. But they could be civil, respectful, and perhaps that was enough." News came that Godric had been executed by order of the Alpha King, his crimes too numerous and heinous to allow mercy. Oswin received life imprisonment. Silvercrest was rebuilding under new leadership, wolves who valued honor over power. 3 months passed in a blur of contentment. Rhiannon settled into her role as Luna, discovering that she was good at it in ways she had never imagined. Not through strength of claw, but through understanding hearts and minds. It was Morin who noticed first, studying Rhiannon with knowing eyes during a routine examination. "You're with child," the healer announced, her wrinkled face breaking into a smile. "About 6 weeks along, I'd say." The world stopped. Rhiannon's hand went instinctively to her stomach, where new life grew. Alaric's child. Her child. Era's niece or nephew in a way, carrying on the bloodline that should have been hers. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. And Alaric's arms were around her immediately, his joy and awe flooding through the bond. That evening, they returned to the hidden waterfall, the secret place that had once been hers and Era's. Rhiannon stood at the water's edge, Alaric's hand warm in hers, and let herself finally, fully grieve. Not just for Era anymore, but for the child her sister had carried, for the future that had been stolen, for all the pain and loss that had brought them to this moment. "I'm afraid," she admitted quietly, "that I'll repeat my father's mistakes, that I'll fail our child the way he failed us." "You won't," Alaric's voice was certain, "because you've seen what cruelty does. You know the damage it causes. Our child will be loved for exactly who they are, not who we want them to be. Promise me." She turned to face him. "Promise me we'll never force them into roles they don't want. Never make them feel like they have to be someone else. I promise." He pulled her close. "We'll write a different story. One where choice matters, where love isn't conditional, where being yourself is enough." Rhiannon leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his presence, the absolute certainty of his love. She thought of Era, of the sister who had tried to forge her own path and paid the ultimate price. But she also thought of the legacy Era had left behind, the courage to choose oneself over expectation. "I'm not her replacement," Rhiannon said softly. "I never was." "No," Alaric agreed. "You're exactly who you're meant to be." "Rhiannon. My mate. Thornvale's Luna. The mother of our child. And that's more than enough." As moonlight danced across the waterfall, and the forest sang its ancient song around them, Rhiannon finally let go of the weight she had carried for so long. She was free, not because she had escaped, but because she had chosen her path, her mate, her future. And that made all the difference.